thank you all for joining us today on this very nasty day. I'm glad you all made it out, and welcome to everybody who is joining us on Zoom. Like Maggie said, my name is Susan. I'm a speech pathologist. By a show of hands, has anybody had any experience with speech pathologists? Okay, good. As a child, as an adult?
As a colleague.
As a colleague, okay. So maybe some of you are familiar with us through your children or grandchildren, but I do want to explain what a speech pathologist does. I'd just like to know who the audience is and what kind of base knowledge they have. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about RVNAhealth. If you're not familiar with our services, we are a not-for-profit agency that covers a very wide continuum of care. We service the community through our well-child clinics, our vaccination clinics, our nursing care for new mothers. We have home care, which I also do, as well as seeing people in our outpatient office, along with occupational therapy and physical therapy and home nurses. We have our Parkinson's Center that we see people in their home and in our office. That is an interdisciplinary team focusing on individuals who maybe just received a diagnosis of Parkinson's or really anywhere in their disease process. We have a new dementia wellness center also with lots of education and lecture series. We have our Comfort Well service line, which is palliative and hospice care. And of course, our private duty nursing and non-medical caregivers in place. So if you are in need of any of our services or think that you could benefit from anything, please, we're a local agency and we serve over 35 different towns in Western Connecticut. Okay, so what exactly is a speech-language pathologist? We are individuals, we're clinicians. We can work with children, infants, and all the way up to death. I particularly specialize in adults. It is very hard to do both things, and I really like working with adults. So I see people with a lot of disorders known as dysphagia, which is a swallowing impairment, aphasia, a language disorder, dysarthria, a motor speech disorder, dysphonia, which is a voice disorder, and people with cognitive impairment. Common diagnoses that I work with are stroke, Parkinson's disease, cancer, ALS, brain injury, dementia, and mild cognitive impairment, and those will be our main focus for today. Okay, so the reason that we're all here, right? Let's talk about our brain. Now, the Alzheimer's Association projects that the number of people aged 85 and older with Alzheimer's disease dementia will increase in the United States to 12.7 million by only 2050, and that is right around the corner. This is also the 5th leading cause of death in individuals 65 and over. So this is a big deal, right? We need a lot of research on this. We need good treatment programs. We need to get people educated on what to look for, what to pay attention to, and we need to advocate for them to talk to their doctors instead of waiting and waiting, because it's very hard to admit changes to yourself, and you don't want to say them out loud because then it makes them very real. So people hold off with talking to their doctors about this, and then when the doctor sees them, a lot of times they don't know what to do with them. So we want doctors to know that, hey, there are people out there that work on this. We are part of that team, okay? So before we go much further, I want to define a couple of terms for you, okay? Cognition and executive function. So cognition, this is your brain's computer system, okay? Your brain is really doing everything for you. Your cognitive skills are at the forefront. This is controlling everything you're doing, okay? This is the mental action to process everything that's coming into our senses, understanding it and interpreting it through our past experiences and our thought processes. Now, we have to have cognition in order to get anything done, right? There's different levels of cognition. Executive function and self-regulation skills, these are very high-level cognitive skills. These include the ability to be self-aware. If we don't have self-awareness, we can't monitor what we're doing and then adjust our behavior. We're oblivious, right, or ignorant to what the problem is. I'm sure we've all probably known somebody that is just maybe a little socially awkward or puts their foot in their mouth, right? But they do it not even realizing what they're doing, right? This is the ability also to problem solve, to make a plan, to figure out what you would need to accomplish this plan, to set about doing it, executing it accurately, and then going back and saying, okay, did that work? Or what do I need to change? So if we don't have good executive function skills, we won't really be able to plan and focus our attention, remember instructions, and juggle multiple tasks very successfully. This is, you can think about it like the brain's manager, okay? Okay. So as we age, there are just gradual changes that happen in our body, of course, we've all noticed, and in our brain, right? So areas in the brain that can control learning, those can get a little smaller, right? Sometimes we lose some of that ability. The aging brain can still learn new things though, even though there is weaker cell communication. You might notice that as a gradual change in the ability to process information quickly or the ability to remember information. You might have some difficulty focusing your attention, some difficulty with multitasking. But what we see in normal aging brain is still a retained language ability. So the ability to read that novel, talk, and understand what people are saying to you, all of that is retained in normal aging. A stage of cognitive impairment that is not dementia, but it's a transitional stage, is known as mild cognitive impairment. So this could be some more pattern-like behavior that you might see developing. You can still carry out everyday tasks, but somebody with mild cognitive impairment might be having things happen more often. And we'll talk about some of those warning signs in a second. Dementia, though, is the general term for a loss of memory, language, problem solving, so that executive function skills. This loss now has become severe enough to interfere with daily life. Okay? So there is a big difference between just normal aging, right? You're spending 15 minutes looking around the house for your car keys, you don't remember where you put them. Okay, that happens to everybody once in a while. That's normal aging. Spend, time wandering around the house, find something that is dangly and makes a lot of noise, and you have no idea what it is, and those are your car keys. That is a dementia, okay? And now that is an example of a very severe, more advanced dementia, okay? So it's good to recognize what are some risk factors for developing dementia, because it's been discovered that changes in your brain can actually start to take place 10 years before you exhibit clinical symptoms of dementia. So if you're aware of, I have maybe 5 or 6 risk factors, you might be more inclined then to start to notice if these behaviors are becoming more pattern-like and mention them to your doctor sooner. So risk factors include smoking, right? That leads to less vascular health, poor vascular health, more inflammation, having a low physical activity or a sedentary lifestyle. So this is going to be a major point that we'll come back to for brain health, right? Because this is a really big risk factor. Being too, I don't want to say quiet, but sedentary and not being active enough is a really big risk factor for poor brain health. Having a poor diet or excessive alcohol consumption, midlife obesity, these things have been associated with poor brain health. Having high blood pressure, midlife cholesterol, right? These are all things many of us are dealing with. Diabetes, right? Leading to more inflammation and that vascular health again. Depression, low social engagement, right? Being on your own, watching too much TV, low cognitive engagement, not challenging yourself. Having a hearing loss. This was one I definitely want to highlight because I found this fact pretty shocking when I first read it. So just having a mild hearing loss, right off the bat, it's going to double your risk of having dementia. A moderate hearing loss, which isn't too much, triples the risk. And then if you have a severe hearing loss, you are at 5 times a higher risk of developing dementia. So if that doesn't scare you, right, into just like saying, okay, I can deal with maybe having some hearing aids, because that's a really big risk factor. Why increase your risk of developing dementia 5 times, right? If your brain has to work harder to hear, just to hear the information coming in, you are not spending the time that you need to process the information. And those really are 2 different things. So hearing and understanding are 2 different things. Like, people can have selective hearing, right? Yeah, I'm hearing you, I hear you, but I'm not really absorbing anything you're saying, right? I do it to my husband all the time because I'm trying to do something else as he's talking, and I hear him fine, and I might be understanding those words, but I'm not spending the time that I need to process it. And that's with good hearing. So imagine someone who is only getting part of the message, part of each word, because their hearing impairment might be at a moderate level. So they're not hearing those high frequencies, or their wife's high-pitched voice, they're not picking up on those higher frequencies. All of the cognitive resources they have available to them are all getting spent just processing the message and trying to fill in the blanks. And the brain needs a lot more energy to then take that information and say, okay, what should we do with it? Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about that attention and memory, those stages, later on in the presentation. But some other risk factors are just a premorbid lower level of education to begin with, having a prior brain injury, or living around an area with high air pollution. So some of these are going to be modifiable for you now. Maybe if you're a smoker, you can stop. There are some things that we might not be able to change at this point in our life, like prior history of brain injury or prior history of air pollution. But we want to do what we can. Okay, so some symptoms to watch out for. These are the symptoms that could be the developing more pattern-like behaviors, or the ones that you're noticing either in a loved one perhaps, that they are maybe not ready to admit out loud. You haven't had maybe a full discussion with the person about this, but you've started to notice some changes. Getting lost in familiar places, repetitive questioning. Okay, that's a big one. And that goes back to attention, right? So hearing the information, understanding it in the moment, but not absorbing it, not retaining it. Some odd or inappropriate behaviors, sometimes that might be in a little bit of a later stage. Dressing inappropriately for the weather, right? Wearing 2 jackets at once. Forgetfulness of recent events. Calling a friend back, and then they say, well, we just spoke about 2 hours ago. Don't you remember? Repeated falls or loss of balance. And you might be saying to yourself, well, what does that have to do with my attention, my memory, my cognition? Well, that comes back to problem solving and safety awareness too, right? So if we are not making safe choices because we're not recognizing that it's not safe to carry multiple things in our hands when we're going up or down the stairs, Or we might be forgetting that we put a box of something right next to our recliner, and then we've dozed off, and then we get up and we just walk right into it and fall. Or just moving too quickly, trying to jump up and grab something, or reaching over and bending too far and not realizing we don't have our balance. It's everything overlaps, our cognition and our motor planning and our visual spatial organization. So having some changes in the ability in your personality, maybe some increased apathy, avoidance behaviors, these are things to pay attention to in your loved ones. If they're recognizing that something is going on, they're gonna probably cancel a bunch of visits with you or not meet you out for coffee like they always do. Maybe they're forgetting, maybe they want to avoid. They're having some changes in diet or eating habits. Sometimes even forgetting that they already ate. Definitely a decline in planning and organization. So, we just had a holiday for Easter, we have Passover starting. These are times we get together with our family, might be hosting a lot of people. That's a big task, right? Planning dinner, time management for 10 to 15 people. If you're starting to see some breakdowns in the ability to do that, or watching somebody around you who used to always do this and now kind of struggle, right? Those are some warning signs. And of course, changes in language and comprehension. So everybody has, the word's on the tip of my tongue. I just can't come up with the name of that actor. I don't remember the name of that restaurant that we went to 2 weeks ago. All of that is normal, right? But I don't want you to scare yourself thinking that you have dementia because you can't remember. I couldn't remember the name of an actor I was thinking of before. But you know what? You relax, 10 minutes later, it came to me. The information's in there, but there's a lot of reasons why it could just be blocked for that one moment. But changes in language function that become much more severe and affect the ability to function and communicate, those are things that I'm talking about, okay? Okay, so why am I here giving this presentation, right? So I'm one of the clinicians, along with an occupational therapist or a psychologist that can work on cognitive therapy. Preventing and slowing cognitive decline through behavioral interventions is a part of our scope of practice and is actually more effective before there's a huge impairment evident, okay? Preventing and modifying those risk factors ahead of time is your best bet. Because once a disease has possibly taken hold in your brain, it's much harder. And, the medical research is still, it's trying to reverse it. There is no cure, okay? We evaluate, we treat, we educate, and we also refer. So many times people will come to me and I might be the first one that they're seeing to discuss this with because maybe they've seen me in a presentation or they've done some reading on their own, or maybe their PCP has referred them. And that's great. I'm not a neurologist, so I can't diagnose a dementia. I often refer to neurology or a neuropsychologist because it is really important in the beginning to form a relationship with someone you like, because it needs a whole team, okay? It's not just one person to address this. You really want to be on board with a specialist who will do a battery of tests and really figure out what is the best course of treatment. I'm part of that, okay? Okay, so there's research out there showing that up to 40% of people with cognitive decline and dementia can be prevented or delayed through evidence-based interventions, okay, designed to improve lifestyle risk factors. So again, going back to those modifiable risk factors, what can you do to help modify those so that you don't have 10 of those on the list, that you're checking those boxes, okay? Up to 50% of individuals with mild cognitive impairment can remain stable or improve when given intervention. So this is huge, okay? We want people to stay, if possible, in that mild cognitive impairment range, right? Because that does not have a significant effect on their day-to-day life. they can still have a great quality of life, and it could be more like normal aging without further transitioning into a dementia, if they're given intervention in time and they're willing to do what it takes, okay? With behavioral and non-pharmacological interventions, it has been shown that this is promising for slowing or preventing cognitive decline. So a behavioral change might be, let's say, getting those hearing aids, right? Or maybe changing your diet. A pharmacological approach, if you're being cared for by a neurologist, might be medication to prevent breakdown of, they've found certain neurotransmitters like acetylcholine is very important in learning and processing, attention, arousals, dyskinesias. When that neurotransmitter breaks down, that's when they see this cognitive decline. So there are medications out there. They're not a cure, and some work better than others for certain people, and they're not really effective in later stages. So it is really good if you want to see any benefit to do this as early as possible. And then, of course, exercise. I'm not a physical therapist, but I work with a lot of physical therapists, and I just get bombarded with that every single day. Exercise, exercise, exercise. It is so, so important. Study after study, it's been documented for, decades. Physical therapy is a much older field than speech pathology, so we're late to the game, and all of our research is, comes out, of course, all the time, but what benefit does exercise have on cognition? This is a big thing that we're looking into now, because it's one of the easiest things that we can do. You don't need to go to a doctor for it. You don't need to get a medicine for it. You just need to have a good exercise plan in place. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. Okay, so this is an acronym. I can't take credit for making it up, but it's a good way to remember what you can do to have a healthier brain and a healthier lifestyle. Dancers. Okay, so each letter of this is going to stand for something that you can do to prevent that cognitive decline. D, disease management. So talking to your doctor about those risk factors, looking at the list, Googling, are there any, what are the risk factors for cognitive decline? Genetics also, right? So there's lots of risk factors out there. Make sure that you're discussing with your doctor. What are my risk factors? What kind of medications am I taking right now that can actually cause cognitive decline? Because there are some out there. It is a side effect of certain medications, especially those like treating COPD, spasms, antidepressants, seizures. These are known to increase a cognitive decline, but some of them are life-saving and you have to keep on taking them. But it's good for you to know, so you have a realistic outcome. You can understand why you're experiencing this, and then you're looking to compensate for these changes. The A, activity. Back to the exercise, okay? Significant reductions in risk of dementia and MCI associated with midlife exercise. What can you do? Aerobic exercise increases your intake of oxygen, increases your heart rate, increases blood flow to the brain. This is all good stuff, helps clearing out toxins. We need to do aerobic exercise, okay? Strengthening. This helps to prevent sarcopenia. We have higher level functions, like executive functions, that benefit from strengthening exercise. It's also been known to decrease white matter lesions in the brain. Mind-body exercise, we can't forget about that too. Okay, that's like your yoga and your Tai Chi. You're reducing the stress in your body, reduces inflammation. The brain does not like inflammation, okay? This promotes improved balance, improved gait. So people who walk faster tend to be able to do things better, do things more for themselves than people who walk slower, okay? Promotes connectivity of neurons, and again, like I said, the less inflammation, the better. So Women, unfortunately, we need to exercise a little bit more. Moderate to high level of activity, okay? Men with a moderate level of activity showed significantly lower risks of cognitive impairment. And regular exercise, about 2.5 weeks or 150 minutes a week, I think the American Physical Therapy Association recommends. Okay, the N, nutrition. So I'm sure we've all heard it from our doctors. I know I'm starting to hear it too. Mediterranean diet, Mediterranean diet, Mediterranean diet. We should be doing it. We are eating way too many processed foods and sugar in America. I was just listening to our nutritionist now, and they call the American diet the SAD diet. It stands for something I forget, but I have to get that actually. But it's very different from the Mediterranean diet. And I'm sure you've all heard of like the blue zone areas, right? What are the areas where people are living the longest and happiest lifestyles? And a lot of them are eating the Mediterranean diet. This is that low meat intake, low butter, high, rich in omega-3 fatty acids, fish, olive oil, avocado. It's very, very popular. It has really been shown to improve brain health. There's a lot of research out there because it modifies those risk factors, right? Lower cholesterol, lower high blood pressure, less inflammation, less risk of diabetes. Like right off the bat, just doing this kind of diet and changing your lifestyle like this, you're unchecking those boxes. Cognitive stimulation, this is huge. Okay, so engaging in cognitively stimulating leisure activities. So I'm not talking about everybody going back to school, right? I mean, we're good, you're here now, you're already lifelong learners, you're interested in something that's gonna help you. So you're doing great. But you have to find something, make sure you have something that is fun for you, but also cognitively stimulating. It would be best if it was done with others too. So it's great, I'm an introvert, I need time alone to recharge my batteries, but I can't do it all the time. I need to be with some other people and interacting, okay? So we're gonna come back to this as well, but social engagement and cognitive engagement, those are two things you can check off the list, they can be done together. Think about joining a new class. I kind of wanted to start to learn how to crochet. That's something a little bit challenging for me. But learning something new is one of the best things that you can do for your brain. So have you guys heard of the term neuroplasticity? Okay, good. So we want our brain to still be able to change and learn as we're older. And it can. There's lots of connections in our brain that are going unused. There's things that we haven't used in our brain. And unfortunately, if we don't use them, we're going to lose those connections. They're going to die eventually. If we can make new connections by learning something new. So I've downloaded a language learning app on my phone. I do it every single day. I have about 119 day streak. I'm very proud of myself. But that is something that we can, a couple of minutes a day, right? Or saying to yourself, I'm gonna learn a new song on this instrument. I'm gonna learn a new instrument. Something that interests you though. If you don't find crossword puzzles interesting, don't force yourself to do them every day, because it's not gonna have that same impact on your life. And it's not gonna be sustainable, right? We want you to be able to love what you're doing and help your brain form new connections, okay? If your brain has a new road to go down, it'll take that route when the other one might be blocked, right? Like we said, oh, we couldn't figure out the actor's name that we were trying to think of because that road was blocked. Well, maybe this new road that I created, this road is free. Maybe this one is gonna help me, okay? I also wanna point out the impact of loneliness on brain health. So loneliness is lack of strong social connections and meaningful connections. So you might be surrounded by lots of family but still feel lonely if you're not feeling connected with those people. Or you might have a really large friend group, but it's all kind of shallow relationships, and you don't really feel that strong connection. Loneliness can significantly increase your risk of premature death, and it has been shown to have a 50% increase in your risk of developing dementia. That is on par with obesity and smoking, okay? That's loneliness, right? And this is like been known for a while, but it's not been out and talked about. And I think with COVID and with the real blatant changes we saw in people who became very lonely, now we're starting to really talk about what mental health means for our cognition. Okay, R, relaxation. So don't forget, you have to carve out time to de-stress, to decompress. Find something that you like doing to replenish those cognitive resources. If you're just going, trying to think like, wait, this is, I'm keeping myself really busy, but it might all be stuff that you are in your comfort zone doing. You know, so yeah, it's good that you're busy, but you're really stressed now, and you're not finding time to relax and decompress. That's not healthy either. So meditation, yoga, tai chi, progressive muscle relaxation, whatever you like, sitting and reading a book or sitting and listening to music, reduce stress, reduce that inflammation, and that can reduce your depression and your anxiety. And we can't, of course, forget about sleep. So deep sleep really helps the brain clear toxins, including amyloid, which is one of the proteins associated with dementia. Healthy sleep appears to play an important role in maintaining brain health with age and may play a key role in AD, which is Alzheimer's disease prevention. Okay, so I just wanted to come back with a quick little information about that social engagement again. So it's been shown in numerous studies that social engagement could be a buffer of cognitive reserve in the wake of cognitive decline. So if there's already a cognitive decline in place, we might not be able to cure it, but we are trying to prevent further decline. We're trying to retain as much good quality of life as we can, okay? Through social engagement, going to get a cup of coffee with a friend, going to get a drink after work. This is using so many skills all in one that we just take for granted. We don't even think that we're using all these skills. We have to be oriented. We have to know time, place, when are we getting there? How are we getting there? We had to make a plan. So we have to use higher level executive function skills. What are we gonna do if our car breaks down? What are we gonna do if there's traffic, right? We're using real-time problem solving. We have to use our language. We have to be there talking and listening to the person. We have to be attentive, mindful of where we are, and living in that moment. We're super engaged, right? All of that just in having a cup of coffee with somebody. Don't take that for granted, okay? Several studies have shown that being socially engaged and receiving emotional support have direct effects on your immediate and delayed memory, your verbal fluency skills, better mental health, reduced stress, and it encourages you to participate in physical activity, okay? Okay. So before we go on to the next slide, which I want to talk a little bit more about memory, I'm going to give you guys 5 words that I want you to try to remember without writing them down. We're going to come back to them in a couple of minutes, okay? Everyone ready? I'm going to say them one time. Apple, pen, tie, house, car. Everybody heard them? Okay. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds of quiet. Okay. So I get a lot of people coming to me with memory difficulty, okay? Now it could be from a stroke, could be from Parkinson's, could be from a brain injury, and like I said, I also see people who are starting to recognize in themselves, I'm forgetting a little bit more often than I think I should be. What do you think? You know? So something they complain about a lot is something called the doorway effect. I'm just walking into the room and I'm always forgetting why I went in there. Who experiences this? No, it's okay, don't be embarrassed, you can say. But how often are we experiencing this? Once in a while, once a day? You know, those are things you should start monitoring in yourself because it does happen to everybody, okay? This will occur. Does anybody know why it might occur actually? Any ideas?
Multitasking.
Right, trying to put too much on your plate, doing too much at once. Yeah, I mean, that's...
Too much on the brain.
Yeah.
Short-term memory.
Sure, so some changes with your short-term memory and your attention. So the brain is being flooded with new stimuli once you go into that other room. And then whoop, out goes the other information that you were trying to remember. So, you get up from your chair, you were working on, well, let's just pretend it was like you're wrapping a gift for somebody. Oh, but you forgot the Scotch tape. So you have to run back into the other room. You run into your kitchen. I keep mine in the junk drawer, but now I'm in my kitchen and oh, I see my cat there and I start petting them. And before you know it, there's like a lot of other things going on. And my brain has to take all that in and register it and then figure out what to do with it. And if I'm rushing or if I'm under a lot of stress, this is going to be worse, okay? It also happens often when we say, I don't need to make a list. I'm just gonna go to the grocery store with 3 things. That's the worst, okay? And you think, how could I have forgotten those 3 things? I knew exactly what I needed them for, but there is so much your brain is dealing with, the lights, the noise, the people, the colors. So if this happens to you often, you have to figure out, why? Why is it happening to me? Is my attention really poor? Am I allowing my attention to just get away from me? And how can I ground myself a little bit more? One of the simplest things to do is if you know that you're likely to do this, is as you're walking from one room to the next is just repeating what you needed. That keeps you focused and it keeps you grounded in the moment. And it gets you to do what you're gonna do first, and then you can let yourself relax and pet that cat and close the window or whatever else you needed to do, okay? Okay, we're gonna come back to those words in just at the end of this slide, okay? So hold on to them. How does memory work, okay? This is the briefest of introductions to memory. Just for the sake of this presentation, but I just wanted to give you an idea, okay? Because most people come to this presentation wanting to know a little bit more about what they can do today about their memory. Attention comes first, right? We mentioned that. That's the prerequisite of memory. If you don't attend to something, you're not going to remember it, okay? It's as simple as that. Once the brain takes in information, it needs to know what to do with it. So when I came in and I was introduced to 2 new people, right in the back, or think about a time when you're introduced to someone new, your attention it's fighting for, there's a lot of things going on. You want to pay attention to your new environment, you're paying attention to yourself, how that person is reacting to you, you're paying attention to your balance, you're paying attention to what you have to do next. And the last thing on your mind is that person's name, right? But if you want to remember it because you're so sick of forgetting people's names when you first meet them, you have to tell your brain, hey, try to pay attention to this, really remember it. So you're telling your brain to encode the information. Don't just hear it and let it go out the other ear like I can do right now. Like I'm not paying attention to what you're wearing. My eyes are seeing it, my brain is processing it in some part of my visual cortex, but it's not letting it go to further areas in my brain that are going to store it. If you want to store the information, you have to assign meaning to it. You have to say, this is important, I need to remember this. What can I do to do that, right? How can I get it to go from my working memory, which is what we just did in that little task where I'm going to ask you those 5 words again. That's your working memory. It's just a quick getting you through each part of the day kind of memory. How can I get that to stay in my short-term memory? And just because it's in short-term doesn't mean it's going to be in long-term. That's 2 separate things, okay? If I want to retrieve it at a later time, I need to store it really well. So before we go on to some strategies now, anybody want to shout out what some of those words are? First one,
Apple.
good. Pen.
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 Tie.
Mhm.
House. Car.
You guys are a good group, nice job.
Well, you told us that we were gonna have to remember, if it hadn't been warned, it might be different.
Well, it would be weird if I just started shouting out some words, but you're getting a quiz after this test too. Okay, how to help your memory. So again, this is, just a brief introduction to what we can do today to help our memory. We have to outsource some things. We cannot expect our brain to remember everything, okay? We have been using these things for a long time already. We haven't maybe labeled it as an external memory strategy, but we've been using it. Post-it notes, calendars, planners, checklists, notebooks, right? Alarms and phone apps. These are a little bit newer, right? We have smart devices in our home that remind me when my food is done, right? I don't use my timer on my stove as much as I used to because I just use my Alexa now, or I use my timer on my watch, right? Because why? I don't have to do multiple things, but you do have to do something because I can't remember 5 different things that I have going on in the kitchen. But you have to recognize that limitation and then say to yourself, well, what am I gonna do to help myself remember? Because this is a high stakes game, right? Making dinner for family. I can't mess this up. So these are things we do externally to outsource that memory. But if we wanna remember things in our brain, so like that little task that you guys just did, what helped? Did anybody do anything special to remember the words?
Visual
I
images.
said it
Visual
to
self.
a picture, create a picture.
Good,
And where they are. I saw them in places.
good. Okay, so I'm hearing a lot of repetition, visual.
The relationship between house and car or something that are right next to each other.
Yeah, so they're
They
associated.
bunch them together.
Yeah, so I think the task can get a little harder if I say very, very unrelated words. You'd have to work a lot harder and a lot faster to come up with those associations, right? But it's true, if we can associate things, if we can picture them, like you pictured the places where you found them, that's what I do too. Take advantage of, if you know that you're a visual, like you learn things better if you see it, or if you learn things better if you experience it. Maybe you can hear something and just retain it, take advantage of that stuff. Recognize how you're remembering things. I know if I'm trying to recall a word, like in my language learning app, I immediately picture it on the screen, right? So that's where my mind goes. It goes to, what did it look like and where was I when I learned it? And I try to put myself right back in that situation mentally, okay? So these are some internal strategies. And as we get older, sometimes we do have to force ourselves to use these things a little bit more because our brain might not be doing it automatically for us, okay? It's also very helpful to have a routine, have a designated place for everything, keep things in line of sight, and use a central location. So, everyone has, when they first walk into their house, hopefully they have either a key hook or a little bowl where their keys, their wallet, their purse, something like that goes, right? That's the easiest thing to do, right? Or they keep their glasses in the same place in the house, or they have multiple glasses spread around the house so they're not forgetting where they put them. You find things that work for you to compensate if you're not remembering, or they have those little eye tags that you could put onto things so that you can find something, okay? Find a strategy that might work best for you so that things don't slip through the cracks. Okay, so again, just by being here, you show that you're interested in learning, that you're willing to start to do some things to make sure that you're going to be healthier. Talk about some changes that you might be noticing either in yourself, talk to your doctor, or if you're noticing it with your loved ones, talk to their doctor. If you feel like you can't say something to them, talk to the family. Try to make an effort to say, there's people out there that can help with this. You know, I feel it too, I'm experiencing it too. Let's see what the doctor says. Maybe we can speak to a specialist in this. There are therapists that can come into the home. You can come see me in the clinic. You know, we definitely want to be there. And I do have some information about the dementia series that we have here. Oh, it's a little small, but this is a great resource. Okay, there's coming up on May 8th, dementia and challenges with communication, home modifications for dementia on May 16th, long-term advanced care planning on June 4th, and of course the support groups every 4th Monday of the month. This is all available on our website. I know it's very, very tiny over here, okay? But if you go to our website and you search rehabilitation and wellness, I believe the dementia information is right under there, okay? But you can always reach out to Maggie or Eileen if you're wondering, they can point you in the right direction, okay? Okay, so thank you so much for attending.